Well, hello again, and thank you for tuning in for this latest edition of the Hermetologist's Guide to the Classical Organ. Thank you for your many comments online, by email, postcards and so on. Thank you particularly to Jonathan Wassling of Cheshire for his comments. And Jonathan made the comment that I might like to say something about why the classical organ is an appropriate instrument in times of social distancing. And this is a point well made because, of course, organs are solo instruments. And one can think of a large church or a large cathedral where a single person playing the organ can fill that entire space with music. And were there to be a large congregation in the choir, of course, a single organist could accompany that, indeed lead that large congregation as well. Of course, organs work by wind moving through them, large volumes of wind under some pressure as well. That's how the pipes sound. So were these organs to have viruses, then that movement of air through them would not be appropriate. But of course, these sort of organs don't have viruses, so this is fine. And of course, the instrument behind me is an electronic version of a pipe organ, so it has no wind moving through it at all. So that's completely safe. I'm here by myself, so this is a completely appropriate piece of organ music in these times of social distancing. The piece of music I thought I'd play today is written by Ralph Vaughan Williams, who is an English composer who lived between 1872 and 1958. And Vaughan Williams wrote a lot of music. He's probably most famous for his variations on a theme by Thomas Tallis, but he wrote some choral music, he wrote symphonies, he wrote some film music as well. And he also wrote some organ music. And the piece I'm going to play today is from Vaughan Williams's 3 Preludes found on a Welsh Hymn Tunes for organ. And I'm going to play the second of those, which is called, and apologies for my pronunciation here of this Welsh word, is called Rhosymedre, which the piece of music tells me translates as lovely. So this is a hymn tune called Rhosymedre, and the piece of music is based around that tune. Now, early on in his career, Vaughan Williams was a church organist. It appears to be a somewhat reluctant church organist, presumably because he was more interested in becoming a composer. And between 1904 and 1906, he was the editor of what was eventually published as the English Hymnal. And of that time, he says, and I quote, I now know that 2 years of close association with some of the best as well as some of the worst tunes in the world was a better musical education than any amount of sonatas and fugues. And I imagine, but I don't know, that during that time, when he was editing this, what became the English Hymnal, he came across this tune, Rhosymedre, and he's tucked it away in his head somewhere, and latterly he's used this tune, and indeed it is a very lovely tune, for this piece of music. And of course, there are 2 other tunes that he uses to make the 3 preludes in this piece. So what I thought I'd first of all do is just play this tune, Rhosymedre, by itself so you can hear it, and then I'll talk a little bit about how that music or how that tune is used in this piece of music. So before we go any further, here is the tune Rhosymedre. Well, that's the tune Rhosymedre, and that tune is what this piece of music is built on. Now, in this music, Vaughan Williams lays out how we're going to play this music, the type of registration, and indeed how the registration changes as the music progresses. And in this case, the music starts on the swell manual, which is the top manual here, with quite a gentle registration. Now, this is the top manual is called the swell because it's one can change the volume of the sound that comes from that manual. And this is done by a mechanism whereby the pipes are enclosed. So all of the pipes that one can select for the top manual in a great big wooden box, a box that effectively I could stand up in. And the front of that is like wooden Venetian blinds. And if they're open, of course, the sound of those pipes can come out. But by the action of a foot pedal, you can close those or partially close those, and of course, therefore, dampen down the sound. So all of the swell manual is said to be an enclosed manual because of all of the pipes are enclosed, and one can therefore control the sound. So this piece of music will start with quite a gentle registration and with those Venetian blinds partially closed to dampen the sound. And then the music goes on a little bit, and then the tune starts to be played on the great manual, and here the music is played, or the tune is played quite slowly, so it's played in minims. Now the great manual contrasts with the swell because the great is said to be unenclosed, so those pipes are just out in the mechanism of the organ, and those pipes will only ever sound at the volume at which they are set to sound, which depends on the air pressure passing through them, which is set when the organ is built. So this is an unenclosed manual, and it has a single volume dependent on that wind pressure. And one can change the volume really only on the grate, the unenclosed grate, by adding other ranks of pipes. But of course, by changing that, adding ranks of pipes, you do change the volume, but you also change the quality of the sound as well. Anyway, so we'll start with some music on the swell, rather gentle tune, some rather gentle music, and then, as I say, the Rhosymedre, this tune is played quite slowly in minims on the grate. So you'll see my hands in two different positions. And in fact, we play the tune through completely once. And when we come to the end of it, then we're heading to a bit of the second section of the music, which is effectively a crescendo. And Vaughan Williams tells us to change the registration before we play the tune for a second time. And he tells us what to do. He tells us to put both hands on the grate and to add 3 ranks of pipes to the grate and to adjust some of the foot pedals as well. And then we play the tune again, and here the tune, both hands are on the grate in this case. The tune is still played largely in minims with music going on around it. Now, to affect this change in the registration, we need to select new ranks of pipes. And if you imagine a stop organ, the ones you pull out, I'd had to pull a number of pipes, number of ranks of pipes at various places. In this particular organ, I'd had to press these taps at the top to select three extra ranks of pipes on the grate and to change the pedals as well. And that's rather too much to do because that change has to happen within 2 beats. So what we do to achieve that is we use a playing aid, which are these buttons here, which are thumb pistons. And the idea of these is you're playing a manual, you can use your thumb just below to press these buttons. And these particular ones here are used to select or preset selections of pipes. And in fact, if you just look, we're going to start, this is on selection 2 here, which is the registration for this start of the music. And where it tells me that we need to change the music, I will actually very quickly just press button 3. And if you just watch the lights at the top, they're all changing as I change those. So that's just changing the pipes. So you'll see when both my hands come towards the grate, in 2 beats, one hand will go down, press a button which will select a whole different registration. For rather irritating reasons, these preset buttons here on the bottom manual, they'd be much more helpful to me if they're on the middle manual, but that's not to be. Anyway, again in this music, so we then come to a much louder registration. It's all on the grate. The tune is played through again with music around it. And then just about as we're to come to the final part of the tune, the music slows down to some slow final notes of the piece of music, of the tune, Rhosymedre, I should say. And then there's a little run of quavers up, and the music plays around a little bit. And then very quickly we reduce the registration again. So again, in 2 beats, I'll press 2 different buttons to go from the loud registration back to a much softer registration. And then one of my hands will go back to the swell with a softer registration, and then latterly both hands back to the swell, so that we end the piece of music and we finally end the tune on the very soft registration, which is where the piece of music started. Now, of course, all these hands moving around between different manuals and pressing these thumb pistons and so on one shouldn't really hear that. And of course, if the console of the organ is distant, one can't see that happening. And of course, you shouldn't be aware of that. You should just hear the music changing, music playing, the registration changing. So don't be distracted by this, but I thought you might be just interested to know why my hands are moving like that. So again, thank you very much for watching. I very much hope you enjoyed this piece of music. As ever, please do remember the health warning, which is absolutely do not listen to this recording using the speakers in your laptop. Get some decent headphones or some proper hi-fi. And of course, if you really want to enjoy this music, get a proper professional recording, which will show how it should be played. But again, thank you for watching.